Welcome back to Until All of Us Are Free, a year long multimedia education project dedicated to Black liberation as collective liberation. I am your host and the creator of this project, Ijoma Olu. This episode is going to be a little bit different than past episodes. This episode, I want to talk about something happening right now that ties into this theme that I feel like we really need to discuss. Now, bear with me because I do think this is something a lot of people are talking about and a lot of people might be groaning about, but it is important that we talk about it. Last week was another No Kings protest. Millions of people took to the streets in cities and towns across the country to say that they want no kings here in the United States. And there has been a lot of discourse, especially online, about these protests, talking about race, privilege, and the overall effectiveness of these protests. These conversations online can be quite brutal, sarcastic, and honestly not incredibly helpful. But I do want to talk about this because this is an important issue and it ties into a broader issue around movement work that really must be discussed. When we're talking about collective liberation, how we fight back matters. I've been thinking a lot about the Women's March back when Trump was elected for the first time, and about the pink pushy hat protesters and the overall kind of parade like protests that were held. I remember at the time, after doing years of activism work and movement work for Black lives, feeling quite heartbroken. Honestly, I had so many people in community, so many people I knew who I thought maybe protests weren't their thing. Maybe that's why they weren't marching for Black lives. Maybe that's why they weren't joining this fight. And to see them book airline tickets to go to DC for these protests, to see them so excited to get out into the streets, once they thought that this vile oppression might touch them, suddenly they found a way to be a part of the protests. I was deeply hurt. I did feel deeply betrayed. All of these people who said, "Oh, what can we do? I wish there was something I could do," suddenly found something they could do. But they couldn't do it for Black lives. They couldn't get out into the streets for those of us who are facing the realities of oppression right now. They could get into the streets to protest a theoretical future oppression that they might face. But it wasn't just how excited people suddenly were to get out into the streets and protest that I noticed. I also noticed how differently these protesters were treated, how often cops were likely to march alongside them, how many people were commenting on how nice the cops were, how little risk of actual brutality and abuse they faced in these marches compared to what Black Lives Matter protesters had been facing for years. And also, I saw what came after, or to be more accurate, what didn't come after. The march that didn't turn into a movement, the march that didn't have clear demands, that didn't turn into work that had concrete goals that we could follow up upon. I don't think it will surprise many of you that I feel similarly about the No Kings protests. And this isn't the video to bash a protest, it is to talk about a broader issue. And the fact that this has me thinking about past protests shows that. But after years of marching to end genocide, after many years of marching for Black lives, after disrupting, organizing, building community coalition, finding concrete local goals for liberation, and fighting hard for those with little fanfare, and in fact, mostly demonization and risk to our health. After risking our jobs, our safety, even our freedom for this work, to know that so many people could get out into the streets and simply say, "No kings," instead of saying, "Let's fight for the lives of people already being harmed." Yes, I feel similar hurt and similar pain. But let's dive deeper than my feelings. Before the last No Kings protest, the one before this most recent one, I think it was in June, I received a message from someone claiming to be an organizer with the No Kings protests, begging me to use my large platform to encourage people to leave their Palestinian flags at home and pick up an American flag instead. They said it was important that I get the word out that this was about unity and that any divisive symbols needed to be left behind. Now, of course, I didn't do that. And if you know anything about me, you'd find it laughable to even send me a request like this. I was quite offended. But I wasn't the only person who received a request like this. Other people were getting similar messages, and we saw many posts online urging people to do the same. The message was clear: leave all controversial imagery and signs behind and come united for an America without kings. But what was controversial was the advocacy for the populations already being brutalized by these systems. So, no, I did not attend either of the No Kings marches in my area. I continued to focus on my writing work, my work here, my work online, and the local community building activism work that I have been doing here in Seattle. But it doesn't mean I could avoid the protests altogether. I am a human being who exists on social media, and that means that my feed was flooded with imagery from these marches. And yes, there were pictures and videos of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people coming together to march in the streets. And it's always beautiful to see people come together, to see people come out in force. There were also a lot of pictures and videos of establishment politicians, politicians responsible for a lot of the oppression we face, marching alongside with protesters. There were a lot of posts from people thanking police officers for being on the right side for once and supporting the marchers. There were posts advertising sign contests with cash prizes. Then there was a post from local paper The Stranger showing video from the Seattle No Kings March, and it had people dressed as bugs with ice vests on, rolling around on a large copy of the American Constitution being hit over the head by a man dressed as Uncle Sam. And I think that is the one that broke me a little bit. And when I gently tried to voice my frustration at the deep unseriousness that was coming across from these marches in these very serious times, I was met with responses from many white people trying to educate me on tactical frivolity. Many people were citing historical satire like Lysistrata. Some people were claiming that satire defeated the Nazis. Others responded that I should just be glad that people were doing something and I should stop trying to ruin people's joy. Now, this is not the first time I've been accused of trying to ruin people's joy. There's a reason why people do not invite me to parties. I am no fun. I have made peace with that. And honestly, if you're following me online, you should have made peace with it a long time ago as well. Otherwise, I don't know what you're into. Is this some kind of kink? Why are you following me? This is what I do. But I digress. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this in a productive way. Now, let me start out by getting some really uncomfortable truths out there. Number one, cops are an armed wing of an oppressive state. That is their primary function, to protect the wealth and power of an oppressive state. In Black Lives Matter protests, in pro Palestine protests, in protests for Native sovereignty, police served to surveil, control, and brutalize protesters. If you think cops are marching with you, they aren't. And if they are, you're marching for the wrong thing. Number two, every person trying to educate me on tactical frivolity was white. And pretty much every person telling me I should be glad people were doing something was also white. Now, I absolutely believe in diversity of tactics. Yes, I am an abolitionist, and that absolutely gives me a specific set of methods that I believe in and subscribe to. But I know that people have other beliefs and other methods, and that we are all trying to help in different ways. I believe that people have different strengths, different abilities, different access, different privileges. And bringing that to the table is important for a well rounded approach to liberation. A diversity of tactics helps us cover more bases and gets more people doing more work in spaces where they are more effective. But this only works if we are A, trying to be effective, B, aware of our strengths and privileges, C, willing to utilize them, and D, doing this work in some sort of communication or coordination with those most impacted. So, if you are one of the people who told me that tactical frivolity is your favorite form of protest, or you are one of the people who has only shown up for these No Kings rallies, I would ask, why? Right now, people are putting their bodies in between ICE agents and the people they're trying to kidnap. Right now, people are knowingly risking being fired from their jobs, speaking out against genocide. Right now, people are risking arrest to interrupt the speeches and tours of politicians who endorse violence. Right now, people are being arrested while interrupting weapons pipelines. People are being arrested and physically abused in their attempts to bring food to starving babies. People are caring for children left behind after their parents have been kidnapped by this state. People are showing up at detention centers and demanding the release of our community members. And the vast majority of these people are not white. Many of them are undocumented. Many are queer and disabled. The vast majority of people doing this hard frontline work are primary targets of this state. And so, if you are not currently a primary target of this system, if you are a white, cisgender, abled citizen, if you have the privilege of being seen as mostly human by this state, if you have the ability to get a lawyer if you feel your rights are violated, if you feel comfortable asserting your rights to a police officer, if you know the general public would be outraged should anything happen to you, if you know you couldn't be easily disappeared by this state, why is tactical frivolity and these frivolous marches your favorite form of protest? How is that the most effective use of your strengths, your privilege, your access, or your abilities? You dressed up, you thanked a cop, you watched a politician speak. Then what? What comes next? What comes next as we continue on with our work? What does your choice of protest say about what you think your role in resistance is? And what does it say that you think our role, the Black, Brown, Indigenous, undocumented, trans, disabled people who are directly targeted by the state, what does it say that you think our role is? What do you think you are for in this movement? And what do you think we are for? Here's one more uncomfortable truth. A lot of people don't know what to do. I hear it all of the time. And while there is information out there, I do recognize that movement work is a skill or a set of skills that you must learn and grow. I know it doesn't come easy to most people. And I also know that the state has done an amazing job in past decades in dismantling our movement networks to make it harder to teach future generations how to do effective movement work. And I will say that many of us doing this work haven't made it that easy for people to join in. I am fully aware of how insular and often toxic our culture can be. It's something I try to work on every day. It's something I try to fight with this project and with my beloved community project as well. And when people are scared and their privilege keeps them from being quite desperate enough to just take a leap anyway, they're going to stick with the devil they know. They're going to join what is easiest and what is the most comfortable. The amount of people at these No Kings marches shows that there are a lot of people who want to do something. It's up to us, those of us in movement spaces, to turn that want to do something into actually doing something. Now, we can't do it all ourselves. It has to be met with a sincere desire to do the work. But we do need to make it easier. We do need to be more welcoming. We do need to be more educating. We need to get more organized. We need spaces for newbies to learn the ropes, to feel safe to ask questions. And I know that takes time and effort and resources. We need activism education spaces. And we need to work together to share resources, to provide more opportunities for people to join into this work. I know that this is easier said than done, but it must be done. These are not steps we can skip. The responsibility of why these protests that do nothing are so huge, while the work we're doing on the ground is so underfunded and undersupported, has plenty to go around. It is not just the complacency of privileged people, although I do put a large share of blame at their feet. It is also how insular we are and how poorly we've built a network to welcome people in and to give them a space to start joining us in this work. I get requests from people every day asking me, how do I plug in? Who's doing this work? Who can I support? I can't find anybody. And I know that often we're too busy doing the work to do that. And so we really have to start thinking more strategically and working together on this. This is why I'm always talking about community. That's why I've started this project here. And that's absolutely why I've started hosting my beloved community gatherings in Seattle. These gatherings are pulling together people from community to teach us how to be an abolitionist community together, how to protect each other, how to gather resources, and how to support those that are supporting our communities. I know others are trying to think about this as well and are building projects in their cities across the country. And I am trying to document as much as I'm doing to put together more resources for people who want to start similar projects in their neighborhoods. But I beseech of you, if you also saw these marches and were saying, this is not enough, or this isn't really doing anything, it's time for us to start thinking about how we can start channeling this energy into something more. So if you attended these marches and thought that was your good deed, that was your part of the resistance, I hope you're listening to this and really thinking about what is the measurable impact that your participation in that march actually had on those being targeted right now by these oppressive systems. And if you were one of the people like me who was actively dismayed by these marches, I want you to be thinking about, what am I doing to channel this collective energy into the important work that I want to see happen? It is time that we all connected with each other and that we plugged into local efforts to protect our communities and create real meaningful change on the ground. It's time that we started building strong networks of community-minded activism work. And it's time that we poured our support and resources into the work that's already being done. If you have particular questions about the beloved community gatherings that I host in Seattle, if you live somewhere and you want to start something similarly, email me and I will be probably putting together like a Zoom call or two where I can get groups of people together and we can just discuss how it's going. I am documenting, I'm interviewing participants, trying to put together resources so I can create some sort of like packet for everyone who wants to create something similar or wants to, use these to create something of their own. But if you just want to reach out to me and talk and say, I would love to have a gathering like this in my city and town, what are your thoughts? Please send me an email. In the show notes is my contact information. Always make sure you check out the show notes at untilwearefree.com, where you'll find important information like this. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Until All of Us Are Free, a year-long multimedia education project dedicated to Black liberation as collective liberation. I am your host and the creator of this project, Ijoma Oluwa. You can always find episode notes at untilwearefree.com. So please don't skip those. There's often a lot of really useful information in there that won't be in the episode itself, or further information about what we discussed in the episode. It's also where you can sign up to be a paid member of this project. This project is free to access, and I try to keep it as accessible as possible. But your support helps me create the best quality content I can. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next time.